Before we get into the specifics of the theory, let's take a look at 3 kinds of communication competences that are related to the development of the theory of constructivism. Successful communication is a complicated matter that requires the mastery of 3 different types of knowledge or competences. They are linguistic competence, social linguistic competence, and functional competence. First, to communicate successfully, people must know the linguistic or grammatical rules that enable them to produce and comprehend sentences in a particular language, such as English, Chinese, or Japanese. So, for instance, if you want to say good morning to someone, you could say good morning if the person is an English speaker. You would say 早上好 if the person is a Chinese speaker. And you would say おはようございます if the person is a Japanese speaker. Such knowledge is referred to as linguistic competence. This kind of competence is studied mostly by linguists, as you would imagine. But having linguistic competence is not enough. Successful communicators must know the social rules that govern the appropriate usage of language for different situations and groups of people. Knowing how to use and interpret expressions in socially correct or appropriate ways is important. Typically, what counts as socially appropriate is determined by the rules of a particular community or group. Knowledge about these kinds of social norms or rules is referred to as social linguistic competence. This kind of competence is studied mostly by social linguists and anthropologists who try to identify the rules for, so to speak, correct speaking in various groups. So sticking with the greeting example I used earlier, depending on the relationship between 2 individuals, the conversational setting, and the cultural context and many other factors, people are expected to follow different nonverbal greeting etiquette, be it a cheek kiss, a social hug, a handshake, a bow and putting hands together, or simply a smile and eye contact. Relatedly, people may use verbal greeting as informal as, hey, what's up? Or as formal as, good morning, sir. Having linguistic and social linguistic competences are good, but they're still not sufficient for successful communication. A highly effective communicator must also know how to generate and process messages in ways that enable them to accomplish their personal and social goals efficiently and effectively. If our goal is to teach something to others, we must know how to describe and explain things clearly so that they can understand and learn. If our goal is to persuade someone to change their attitude or behavior, we need to produce messages that will convince them. If our goal is to make a distressed person feel better, we need to know how to comfort the person sensitively. If our goal is to project a positive image so that people will like us and trust us, we need to know how to speak and act to elicit those positive impressions. So to be an effective communicator, one must be effective at both message production and message reception. Skillful communicators must be able to appreciate the nuances in others' messages and must even be capable of reading between the lines to extract intended and sometimes unintended meanings. Knowing how to produce messages and interpret the messages of others in ways that enable you to accomplish your goals is referred to as functional competence. This kind of competence is studied mostly by researchers in the communication discipline and is the kind of competence with which the theory of constructivism is most concerned. Now, moving on to the specifics of constructivism. What exactly is this theory about? Well, constructivism focuses primarily on 2 key communication processes that shape our functional communication competence, and these processes are social perception and message production. Now, starting with social perception. Social perception is the process through which we make sense of the social world, including the people around us and our social relationships with others. In most social encounters, quite spontaneously, we seek answers to a range of questions about the others around us, who they are, how they stand in relation to us, the type of situation they currently occupy, what they are doing, their intentions and motivations, and their personal qualities. Social perception is particularly important for communication because people base their communication behaviors on their perceptions of others' conduct, qualities, roles, intentions, and dispositions. In other words, much of our own communication behaviors toward others, as well as our understanding of others' communication behaviors, is grounded in our perception of others.